Okay, this is a story that you old followers have heard, but it never gets old. And several of my friends, one of my followers said he hadn't heard it. So here we go with Squirrely. Okay, when I was logging years ago, when Kendra was 2, it's 98, 99, something like that. Kendra was 2 or 3 years old, still in a walker. And we was in a trailer basically like this, our old trailer's basically like this. And I cut a tree down, and there was a baby squirrel in it. Well, I had to take it home. I asked the vet how to raise it. We ended up getting it pet, and I asked, Kendra could barely talk, and I said, what do we call it? She said, Squirrly. Squirrly. I said, okay, we'll do that. I said, so, and we had our little Dotson Jack in the house. And of course, they couldn't get along. Well, it got to where it'd run around the house. We'd have to let Jack out, and it'd, jump up in the shades and do all that stuff. Well, it got to where Kendra started feeding it Cocoa Pebbles. And Lisa had some pink cloth seats. For some reason, it would just fill up on those Cocoa Pebbles, and then not long after that, it would pee red. So anyway, Squirrely was wanting out one day, and Lisa said, let Jack outside. My wife, she was gorgeous, but she always was self-conscious of her body, and she wore clothes twice her size. So she was there in her jogging pants and her old, I call her old lady clothes, old lady shirts, and she was fixing supper in the kitchen, and we had that table over there, and so I let Squirrely out. Then here come Kendra, and she was feeding it Cocoa Pebbles, and it would just blown up. You could just see it; it's like blowing up. And it was sitting there, and all of a sudden Jack started scratching on the door, and Kendra was there in her walker, and she was like, she was sitting there, and Lisa said, get the squirrel Jack wants in, put it up. Well, that squirrel didn't want to go in. And I went and grabbed it, and that thing popped straight up in the air, and there it went. The chase went on. It kept running around those cloth seats, and it was peeing red on them. She said, oh my gosh, get that squirrel, you're running my seats. And Kendra was going, like you go, Squirrely. And Jack was hitting at the door, and it was making it worse. That squirrel, I tried to get it, and it takes one jump from one side of the table over in front of Lisa's foot, and she's sitting there like this, and it runs up her britches leg, and she grabs it right at her ankle. All that's hanging out was a little tail, just doing this. It looked like somebody stuffed Daniel Boone's cap up there, and just the tail was hanging out. And she goes, ooh, Mitchell, get it up. And she tried to get it, and it clamped on. And it looked like, you ever saw Caddyshack with that gopher going across the wood, the golf course? That's what it looked like going up her leg. She'd grab it, then it'd claw her, she'd let it go, and it looked like that gopher. It made it around the back of her leg and got the bend in the knee. She's going, Mitchell, get this thing off of me. And it made its way around. I said, well, you're going to have to do something. She said, and it got up to her thigh. And I said, you're going to have to pull your pants down. No, I ain't going to pull my pants down. It shot right up into her panties. It's right here. Big old bulge right in her panties. I said, pull. I said, it's just me and Kendra here. She said, I ain't pulling my pants down. I said, I've seen it before, for goodness sakes. It's the only way I can get that squirrel out. She pulled that squirrel down, and that squirrel had a wad full of panties and some other, say, hair in each hand, paw, or whatever. And it took me a while to unclamp it, let's say. So that's the Squirrely story. And I don't know, I used to be able to tell it funnier, but still, that's funny. Squirrel in the panties. And my wife never lived it down. People will see her over at Walmart. Used to say, she said, oh my God, you've been talking to my husband. Walked into Bentley's one day, and a guy said, I've heard to ask you what it's like to have a squirrel in your panties or up your britches leg. She said, oh my God, I wish Mitchell would shut up. So, and the squirrel eventually got bigger, and one day we'd take it out and let it climb trees, and it'd come back down and jump on my shoulder. Well, one day it kept climbing the trees and went off and lived happily ever after. So, I hope you enjoyed the Squirrely story, guys. Later.